I walked into my granddaughter's wedding, and before I even reached the champagne table, my daughter-in-law pointed at me and yelled, "Security! This woman wasn't invited. Remove her." Let me tell you something about humiliation. It doesn't hit you all at once, it comes in waves. The first wave? That was when every single head in that ballroom turned toward me. Crystal chandeliers throwing light on 200 faces, all staring at the old woman in the doorway wearing her best navy dress from Macy's, the one I'd saved 3 months to buy because I wanted to look dignified at my only granddaughter's wedding. The second wave? That was when I saw Talia, my daughter-in-law of 23 years, standing there in her powder blue mother of the bride gown, her face twisted into this smile. Not a friendly smile, a victory smile. Like she'd just checkmated me in a game I didn't even know we were playing. The jazz quartet went quiet. Someone's champagne glass clinked against marble. And Talia raised her hand, actually raised her hand like she was hailing a cab on Fifth Avenue, and snapped her fingers at the security guard near the entrance. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying across that massive room with its 20-foot ceilings and imported Italian marble. "This woman wasn't invited. She needs to leave. Now." I stood there, 72 years old, my arthritic hands clutching my small purse, feeling 200 pairs of eyes burning into my skin. The security guard, a young kid, maybe 25, with kind eyes that suddenly looked very uncomfortable, took a step toward me. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I'm sorry, but if you're not on the guest list—" "I'm her grandmother," I said, and my voice cracked. God, I hated that my voice cracked. "I'm Emily's grandmother. I raised that girl for 6 years when—" "She's confused," Talia interrupted, walking toward me now, her heels clicking on that marble like gunshots. "She's my husband's mother, yes, but she wasn't invited to this event. Family issues. You understand." She looked at the security guard with this practiced sympathy, this perfectly crafted concern. "We've had to set boundaries." Boundaries. That word tasted like poison in my mouth. The third wave of humiliation? That was when I saw my son, Marcus, my only child, standing behind his wife, looking at his shoes. Not at me. At his shoes. My son, who I'd worked 2 jobs to put through Columbia. My son whose father died when he was 9, leaving me to figure out how to be both parents. My son, who used to hold my hand crossing Broadway and tell me I was the strongest person he knew. He wouldn't even look at me. "Ma'am," the security guard said again, and now his hand was on my elbow, gentle but firm. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Around us, the wedding guests had started to whisper. I could hear the words floating through that ballroom like smoke. Drama. Awkward. Who is that? How embarrassing. But Talia wasn't done. Oh no. Talia was on a roll. She turned to the crowd, to her friends, her family, her carefully curated audience of Manhattan social climbers, and projected her voice like she was giving a toast. "I apologize for this disruption. Some people just can't respect boundaries, even on a day as special as this." And that's when something inside me shifted. You know that feeling? When you've been pushed and pushed and pushed and suddenly you're not scared anymore? You're not even angry. You're just clear. Crystal clear. I looked at Talia, really looked at her standing there in her designer gown with her fresh Botox and her borrowed confidence. I looked at the security guard still holding my elbow. I looked at the owner's podium near the back of the room, where a well-dressed woman with a clipboard was watching this whole scene unfold with increasingly narrow eyes. And then I looked back at Talia. She must have seen something change in my face, because her smile faltered. Just for a second. "You want to speak to the owner?" I asked quietly. So quietly that Talia had to lean in to hear me. "What?" she snapped. I raised my voice just slightly. Still calm. Still controlled. "You want to speak to the owner of this venue? About having me removed?" Talia's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Yes," she said loudly, triumphantly. "Yes, I do. This is unacceptable. On my daughter's wedding day—" "Security," she called out again, louder now, drunk on her own power. "Get the owner here. Now. I want this woman escorted out and banned from the property." The security guard looked torn. The wedding guests looked fascinated. Marcus still looked at his shoes. And I just stood there, my heart pounding, my hands steady, and said one sentence. Just one. "Oh, honey," I said softly, almost sadly. "You really don't want that." Talia laughed. Actually laughed. And why not? I didn't answer, I just waited. Because what Talia didn't know, what my son had apparently never bothered to tell his wife in 23 years of marriage, was exactly who paid for Columbia. Who paid for their down payment on that Park Slope brownstone? Who paid for the small private investor who'd backed Marcus's consulting firm? And who owned the building we were standing in? The owner was already walking toward us, her heels clicking purposefully across the marble. I could see the moment coming. That beautiful, terrible moment when everything Talia thought she knew was about to shatter like crystal. And I waited for it. The owner's heels were still clicking toward us when I smelled it just for a second, that sharp antiseptic smell mixed with industrial floor cleaner. The smell of New York Presbyterian Hospital at 4 a.m. when the hallways were empty and my hands were raw from scrubbing. Funny how a scent can pull you back 30 years in a heartbeat. I was 28 when Robert died, heart attack at 32, right there on the subway platform at 96th Street, briefcase still in his hand. Marcus was 9 years old. We had $847 in our checking account and a rent-controlled apartment in the Bronx that I knew I had to hold on to like my life depended on it. Because it did. So I took the night shift at the hospital. Cleaning crew. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week. During the day, I worked the front desk at a dental office in Midtown. I'd come home at 8:30 in the morning, wake Marcus up, make him breakfast, eggs and toast. Every single day walk him to PS 114, then sleep for 4 hours before heading to the dental office. People talk about exhaustion like it's this dramatic thing. It's not. It's just quiet. It's falling asleep on the train and missing your stop. It's putting salt in your coffee instead of sugar because your brain stopped working somewhere around Tuesday. It's your son asking why you're always tired, and you smile and say you're not, even though your bones feel like they're made of lead. But Marcus. God, Marcus was everything. I used to pack his lunch every night before my hospital shift: turkey sandwich, apple slices, those little chocolate chip cookies from the bodega on 183rd. I'd write him notes on the napkins. Love you, baby. Make today count. He kept every single one in a shoebox under his bed. Every single one. When he got into Bronx Community College, I cried for 20 minutes in the bathroom at work. When he transferred to Columbia for pharmacy school, I picked up weekend shifts at a nursing home in Yonkers. 60-hour weeks, 70 sometimes. I wore the same 3 pairs of scrubs for 2 years because every extra dollar went into an envelope labeled Marcus, books, and fees. He graduated summa cum laude. Walked across that stage in his cap and gown, and when they called his name Marcus James Wilson, he looked right at me in the audience and mouthed, "Thank you." That was the best day of my life. The second best day was when Emily was born, my granddaughter, 7 pounds, 3 ounces of perfect. Marcus brought her to my apartment when she was 3 days old, and I held her in my arms and thought, this is what it was all for. For 5 years, I watched Emily every weekday while Marcus and Talia worked. I taught her to read using the same books I'd read to Marcus. I took her to dance classes at the Y, paid for her ballet shoes, sat through every single recital. When she had nightmares, she'd call my apartment at midnight, and I'd talk to her until she fell back asleep. Talia was always polite. You know that kind of polite? The kind that feels like plastic? She'd say, "Thank you, Jada," with this smile that never reached her eyes. She'd make comments, little ones, about my furniture being vintage or my neighborhood being transitional. Once, at Thanksgiving, she told her mother I was very helpful for someone her age. I never said anything, not once. Because Marcus loved her, and Emily needed a stable home, and I learned a long time ago that sometimes love means swallowing your pride and keeping your mouth shut. But I remember the day everything shifted. Emily was 10. She'd just gotten into Dalton, the private school on the Upper East Side, $45,000 a year. Marcus came to my apartment, sat at my kitchen table, and put his head in his hands. "Mom," he said, "I don't know how we're going to do this." I had $127,000 in a retirement account, money I'd been saving since I was 30. Money that was supposed to keep me comfortable when I couldn't work anymore, when my knees finally gave out from all those years on hospital floors. I transferred $90,000 the next week, didn't tell anyone except the bank. Told Marcus it was a loan from my investment fund, let him believe I'd been smarter with money than I actually was. Talia never asked where the money came from, never said thank you. Just enrolled Emily at Dalton and started telling her country club friends about her daughter's prestigious education. If you've ever given everything to someone who later turned away, you'll understand this part. Thank you to everyone who helps keep these stories alive. Every word you share, every act of kindness helps protect those who still believe in family. Standing in that ballroom now, watching the owner walk toward us, I thought about Emily at 10 years old, holding my hand on the first day of school, nervous in her new uniform. I thought about how Talia hadn't invited me to see her graduate, and I thought about the one thing Talia didn't know, the thing Marcus had apparently never told her. That $90,000? It wasn't the only money I'd ever given. It started small. That's how these things always start, isn't it? Marcus stopped calling. At first, I told myself he was busy, new clients, new projects, life in Park Slope with its organic farmers markets and weekend brunches. Then weeks became months, and I realized I was always the one reaching out, always the one texting first, always the one suggesting coffee. His responses got shorter. Busy week, Mom? Rain check? Talia's got me running around. Talia. Everything became about what Talia needed, what Talia wanted, what stressed Talia out. Thanksgiving? Talia's hosting her family this year. Small space, you understand. Christmas? Talia thinks it's better to keep it intimate. Emily's 16th birthday? Talia's planning something special, just immediate family. I wanted to ask, when did I stop being immediate family? But I didn't. I just smiled and said, of course, honey, whatever works. Then came the comments, little paper cuts disguised as concern. Mom, are you sure you should still be taking the subway at your age? Marcus asked one afternoon when I'd managed to pin him down for lunch near his office. I'm 72, not dead, I said, trying to laugh it off. Talia thinks he started, and I felt my jaw tighten. Talia thinks maybe it's time to consider assisted living, something with activities, meals included, less stress. Less stress? For who? I don't need assisted living, I said quietly. I have my house, I have my life. He looked at his phone. We just worry about you, Mom. Rattling around in that big place all by yourself. That big place. My home on Maple Street in Queens. The 3-bedroom house I'd bought in 1998 with money I'd saved for 15 years. The house where Marcus had his own room until he was 31. The house where Emily learned to ride a bike in the driveway. My sanctuary. I'm fine, I said. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes, that look. That Talia's right about you look. The final crack came 3 months before the wedding. I'd stopped by their brownstone unannounced, my mistake, apparently because I'd baked Emily's favorite lemon bars and wanted to drop them off. I used my key, the one Marcus had given me years ago for emergencies. I heard voices in the kitchen. Talia and her mother, Gloria. I should have called out, should have made noise. But something in Talia's tone made me freeze in the hallway, my hand still on the doorknob. Once we get the Maple Street house signed over, Talia was saying, her voice bright and efficient, like she was discussing a business transaction, we'll finally have breathing room. The rental income alone would cover Emily's grad school. My heart stopped. Does Jada know? Gloria asked. Talia laughed. Actually laughed. Marcus is handling it. She barely uses that house anyway, it's too much space for one person. She'll thank us later. Honestly, at her age, she should be somewhere with medical staff nearby. I pressed my back against the wall, the lemon bars slipping from my hands. They hit the floor with a dull thud. What was that? Gloria said. I didn't wait. I walked out, left the door open, left the lemon bars scattered across their expensive hardwood floors. My hand shook the entire subway ride home. My house, my house. The one thing I had that was truly mine. That I'd worked for. That I'd earned with my own sweat and sacrifice and 60-hour weeks. They wanted to take it. And Marcus, my son was handling it. I called him that night. My voice steady despite my shaking hands. Did you know? I asked when he answered. Silence. Long enough that I knew. Mom. Did you know Talia wants my house? It's not like that, he said, but his voice had that guilty edge to it. That caught sound. We were just talking about options. You're getting older, and that house is a lot to maintain, and we thought, Talia has some good points. I hung up. I sat in my kitchen, in my house, and stared at the refrigerator covered in Emily's childhood drawings, Marcus's old report cards, photographs of us smiling, arms around each other, back when I thought family meant something permanent. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that their betrayal made you question your own worth, you're not alone. Thank you to everyone who helps me tell these stories. Your support keeps this space alive for those who still believe that truth, somehow, will always find its way. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I just sat there in the dark, listening to my house settle around me, and realized something cold and clarifying. I'd given them everything, and they saw me as nothing more than an asset to liquidate. The wedding invitation came 2 weeks later, heavy cardstock, elegant calligraphy, delivered by mail like I was just another guest. My name wasn't on it. The house is so quiet now. Even the walls seem to avoid me. I sit in my living room, the same living room where Marcus took his first steps, where Emily learned to tie her shoes, where Christmas mornings used to explode with wrapping paper and laughter, and I realize I can hear everything: the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of floorboards settling, the tick of the clock Robert's mother gave us in 1987. Time, moving forward, while I stay perfectly still. There's a photo album on my lap. Green leather, corners worn soft from years of handling. I open it to a random page. Marcus at 12, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up a spelling bee trophy. Me standing behind him, my hand on his shoulder, my face younger but my eyes the same, proud, tired, full of love. I didn't know how to measure. I trace his face with my finger, this boy who became a man I no longer recognize. My phone sits on the coffee table, screen dark. It's been 4 days since I called Marcus. He didn't call back. I tell myself he's busy wedding preparations, work stress, Talia needing this or that, but the truth sits heavier. He's avoiding me. They're all avoiding me. Mrs. Chen from next door stopped me at the mailbox yesterday. "Jada, so exciting about Emily's wedding. You must be thrilled." Her smile was so genuine it hurt. "When's the rehearsal dinner? Friday?" "Thursday," I said quietly. "Oh. Are you heading into the city early then? Need a ride to the train?" I looked at her kind face, her expectant eyes, and I lied. "Actually, I'm not feeling well. Might sit this one out." Her face fell. "Oh no. But it's your granddaughter's rehearsal dinner." "I'll be fine for the wedding," I said, already backing toward my door. "Just need to rest. I haven't told anyone the truth." "How do you explain that your own son didn't invite you? That your daughter-in-law erased you from the guest list like you were a typo, an error, something to be corrected?" "The dress hangs on my closet door. Navy blue? Knee length? Simple. I bought it at Macy's 3 months ago when I still believed I'd be sitting in the front row, watching Emily walk down the aisle. When I still believed I mattered. I iron it anyway. Carefully. The steam rises between us like a curtain. I press the collar flat, smooth the sleeves, run the iron over fabric that suddenly seems thin, outdated, insufficient for a Manhattan wedding venue with crystal chandeliers and imported marble. I wore a dress like this to Marcus's pharmacy school graduation. Different color burgundy then, but the same modest cut, the same careful choice of something respectable on a cleaning woman's budget. I was so proud that day, so full of joy I thought I might burst. Now I just feel small. If you've ever sat in a room so quiet it started to echo your thoughts, you'll understand this silence. Thank you to those who help keep these stories alive. Your kindness helps give voice to people who've been forgotten, who sit alone in their pain, waiting to be seen again. I hang the dress back up and walk to the kitchen. There's a cup in the sink, just one, always just one now, and I wash it even though it's already clean. Hot water, soap, rinse, dry. The rhythm is soothing, mindless. I've washed this cup 3 times today. The kitchen used to be loud. Marcus doing homework at the table, radio playing Hot 97, me cooking beans and rice, him telling me about his day, about his friends, about the girl he liked in chemistry class. We'd laugh. We'd argue about stupid things. Curfew, sneakers, whether he could get his ear pierced. Normal things, family things. Now it's just me and the hum of the refrigerator and the cup I keep washing because I don't know what else to do with my hands. I raised a man who doesn't see me anymore. That thought comes at 3 in the morning when I can't sleep, when the darkness feels like water and I'm drowning in my own bed. I raised a man who nods when his wife suggests taking my house. Who doesn't call back? Who looks at his shoes when his mother is being thrown out of his daughter's wedding? I taught him better than that, didn't I? Or maybe I taught him too well. Maybe I taught him that love means sacrifice, that mothers are supposed to disappear quietly, that asking for space or respect or basic human dignity is selfish. Maybe I taught him I don't matter. The ceiling has 43 cracks. I've counted them 17 times. Tomorrow is the wedding. I'll get dressed. I'll take the Q train to the R to the 6, walk 4 blocks in shoes that hurt my feet, and stand in that doorway knowing I'm not wanted there. But I'll go anyway. Because that's what mothers do, right? We show up, even when there's no room for us, even when our sons have learned to look away, even when the only sound in our lives is silence. The venue manager was a tall woman in her 50s, silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, tailored black suit that meant business. Her heels clicked across that marble floor with the kind of authority that made conversations stop mid-sentence. She'd been watching from the back. I'd seen her there, clipboard in hand, eyes narrowed, taking in the whole scene like she was watching a play she'd seen too many times before. Now she was walking straight toward us. Talia's face lit up like she'd just won the lottery. Finally, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Someone who can handle this situation professionally. The manager stopped about 3 feet away, her gaze moving from Talia to me, then to the security guard still awkwardly holding my elbow, then back to Talia. I'm Rebecca Torres, she said, her voice neutral, professional, general manager. I understand there's a problem? Yes, Talia said, stepping forward like she owned the place. She actually put her hand on her hip. This woman, she gestured at me like I was furniture, was not invited to this event. She's my husband's mother, but we've had to establish boundaries for our family's well-being. She's crashed my daughter's wedding, and I need her removed immediately. A few guests gasped. Someone's phone was definitely recording this. I could see the little red light. Rebecca Torres looked at me. Her face gave nothing away. Ma'am, is this accurate? I opened my mouth, but Talia cut me off. Marcus and I are paying for everything today, she announced, turning slightly so her voice carried to the crowd. The venue, the flowers, the catering, the band. Every single thing. This is our event, not hers. We have every right to decide who attends. She said it with such conviction, such certainty. Like she'd rehearsed it, like she truly believed it. Marcus stood 10 feet away, still looking at his shoes, still silent. Rebecca Torres didn't move. She just stood there, studying Talia with the kind of expression you'd give someone trying to explain that the sky is green. You're paying for everything, Rebecca repeated slowly. Yes, Talia said, we are. So I'm asking you, as the manager, to remove this woman from the premises. If you don't, I'll be forced to call the police for trespassing. The ballroom had gone completely silent, 200 people holding their breath. Rebecca Torres looked at me again. Really looked at me this time. And something shifted in her face, not quite a smile but close. Recognition maybe. Or respect. Before I do anything, she said carefully, I need to verify the booking information. Standard protocol. She turned to Talia. You said you're paying for today's event? Yes, Talia said impatiently. Marcus Wilson and Talia Wilson. The booking is under our names. Rebecca pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, scrolled. The silence stretched like taffy. Then she looked up. I see a booking under Emily Wilson Chen for today's date. Ceremony and reception. Is that correct? Yes, Talia said. And you're saying you and your husband paid for this event? Yes, we did. Every penny. Rebecca Torres nodded slowly. Then she turned to me. Mrs. Wilson, she said, and her voice had changed warmer now, respectful. I apologize for the confusion. Talia's smile froze. There seems to be a misunderstanding, Rebecca continued, still looking at me, about who actually holds the contract for today's event. If you've ever found truth in the quiet moments after pain, you know what this part feels like. Thank you to everyone who supports these stories. Your kindness keeps hope alive for people still finding their voice after betrayal. The air in that ballroom shifted, like electricity before lightning. I didn't smile. I just stood there, my hands steady, my heart finally calm, and waited for Talia's world to crack wide open. What are you talking about? Talia said, her voice sharp now, losing its polish. We paid. Actually, I said softly, speaking for the first time since Rebecca arrived, you didn't. Actually, I said softly, you didn't. Talia's head snapped toward me, her perfectly styled hair catching the chandelier light. Excuse me? I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. You didn't pay for this venue. Marcus didn't either. Her laugh was sharp, practiced. This is absurd. Marcus, tell your mother. But Marcus wasn't looking at her. He was looking at me now, finally. His face pale under those expensive lights. Rebecca Torres stood perfectly still, her phone in her hand, watching me with something that might have been respect or recognition, maybe both. 6 months ago, I said, my voice steady, conversational even, my Aunt Ruth passed away. You remember Aunt Ruth, Marcus? She used to make you banana pudding every Sunday when you were little. Marcus nodded slightly, confused. She left me a building in Brooklyn, 4-story walk-up in Bed-Stuy. Been in the family since 1972. I paused, letting that sink in. I sold it in March. Got $840,000. Talia's smile was starting to fracture. That's wonderful, Jada, but what does this have to— I invested it, I continued, ignoring her. Quietly. Through an LLC, no family name attached, just good business sense. The ballroom was so quiet I could hear someone's bracelet jingle 3 tables away. This venue, I said, looking around at the marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, the imported Italian fixtures, was struggling. Beautiful place, terrible management, drowning in debt. The previous owner was desperate to sell. Rebecca Torres's face remained neutral, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. So I bought it, I said simply. In February. 3 months before Emily got engaged. There comes a point when silence stops, meaning defeat. It becomes preparation. I'd spent 6 months preparing. 6 months of small, quiet, irreversible actions. Opening a new bank account at a different branch where nobody knew my son's name. Meeting with a lawyer in an office building in Lower Manhattan, signing papers, creating LLCs, building walls that looked like nothing but were actually fortresses. Each keystroke was a knife cut through chains I hadn't even realized I was wearing. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because one night, sitting in my kitchen at 3 a.m., I realized that generosity without respect isn't love, it's just slow disappearance. You're lying, Talia said, but her voice had lost its confidence. Marcus paid Emily's deposit, I said. $12,000. I waived the rest of the fee as a wedding gift to my granddaughter. I looked at my son. I told Rebecca to put the booking under Emily's name. I didn't want credit, I just wanted my granddaughter to have a beautiful wedding. Marcus's face had gone from pale to gray. I never told you, I said to him, because I thought you'd insist on paying me back, or you'd tell Talia. And I knew. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I knew she'd find a way to make it about her. This is insane, Talia said, but she was looking around now, seeing the guests' faces, seeing their phones, seeing the story shift in real time. You can't just— Mrs. Torres, I said quietly, still not raising my voice. Would you mind confirming the ownership of this venue for everyone present? Rebecca Torres smiled then. Actually smiled. Certainly. As of February 14th of this year, this property is owned by Maple Street Holdings, LLC. The primary shareholder and decision-maker is— she looked directly at me, Jada Marie Wilson. The silence that followed was magnificent. For years, I mistook generosity for love. Now, I'm learning the quiet math of self-respect. Talia's mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's impossible. We signed, we paid. You paid a deposit for Emily's booking, Rebecca said professionally. Mrs. Wilson waived the remainder as a family courtesy. I have the paperwork in my office if you'd like to review it. Marcus finally found his voice. Mom, why didn't you? Because you stopped calling, I said simply. Because your wife was already planning how to take my house. Because I needed to know that I still existed outside of what I could give you. It's funny how silence can sound like thunder when guilt starts to echo. Talia's phone started buzzing. Then Marcus's. Text messages, I assumed, from their friends in the crowd, asking what the hell was happening, whether this was real, whether they'd really just tried to throw the venue owner out of her own building. I looked at the security guard, still holding my elbow, looking deeply uncomfortable. You can let go now, I said gently. He dropped his hand like I was on fire. Then I looked at Talia. Really looked at her. You wanted to speak to the owner. Well, here I am. They taught me that love meant giving. Today, I'm teaching myself that love can also mean stopping. The room didn't just go quiet, it went silent, the kind of silence that has weight, that presses against your eardrums, that makes you hear your own heartbeat. Talia's face had gone from porcelain to chalk. That's not possible. You're just what? I asked quietly. Poor, old, disposable? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Tried again. You take the bus. You wear clothes from Macy's. You live in that tiny house in Queens. I live modestly, I said, my voice steady as stone. I never lived weak. Rebecca Torres cleared her throat, professional but clearly enjoying this. Would you like me to provide documentation for the guests, Mrs. Wilson, or should we move forward with the wedding as planned? Documentation, someone called from the crowd. I couldn't see who, but I recognized the voice, Talia's mother, Gloria. I want to see proof. Rebecca nodded, already pulling up files on her tablet. Maple Street Holdings LLC purchased this property on February 14, 2025, for $2.3 million. Primary shareholder, Jada Marie Wilson. The company holds full ownership and operational authority over the venue, she scrolled. The booking for today's event was made on March 8 under Emily Wilson Chen's name. Base venue fee, $42,000. Mr. and Mrs. Marcus Wilson paid a deposit of $12,000. Mrs. Jada Wilson covered the remaining $30,000 as a wedding gift. Talia was shaking her head. No. We paid for the catering. We paid for the flowers. We paid for... The upgraded catering package was purchased by Maple Street Holdings as a venue courtesy, Rebecca continued calmly. Premium bar service, past hors d'oeuvres, 5-course dinner. Retail value, $38,000. The floral arrangements were coordinated through the venue's preferred vendor, also covered under the courtesy package. She looked up from her tablet. Total value of services provided by Mrs. Wilson, either directly or through her company, approximately $106,000. Someone in the crowd gasped. Multiple people were filming now. I could see at least 6 phones pointed at us. Marcus's voice came out strangled. Mom, you paid for all this? I turned to look at my son. Really look at him. His face was the color of old newspaper, his eyes wide, his expensive suit suddenly looking like costume on a little boy who didn't understand the game he'd been playing. I paid for your education, I said softly. I paid for Emily's school. I helped with your house. And when Talia called me in January, crying because the venue you'd originally booked went bankrupt and took your deposit $25,000, I made sure my granddaughter would still have her dream wedding. Talia's face went from white to red. You didn't. I never called. January 17th, I said. Tuesday. Around 10 p.m. You called from Marcus's phone because yours was dead. You were sobbing so hard I could barely understand you. You said the Gramercy Plaza had declared bankruptcy, that Emily was devastated, that all the good venues were booked, that you didn't know what to do. I paused. You asked if I knew anyone in the industry who could help. The silence was deafening. I told you I'd handle it, I continued. I called Rebecca the next morning. I bought this venue 3 weeks later. I made sure it was renovated in time. I made sure everything Emily wanted was possible. I looked at Talia directly. I did this for my granddaughter, not for you, and I never told you because I knew you'd find a way to take credit for it. Talia was shaking, literally shaking, but you said you were just a cleaning woman? I finished. I was. For 30 years, and I was damn good at it. Good enough to save every dollar I could, good enough to invest wisely. Good enough to build something real while you were busy spending money you didn't have, trying to impress people who don't care about you. Marcus took a step toward me. Mom, I didn't know. You didn't ask, I said, and my voice finally broke. Just a little. You stopped calling. You stopped seeing me. You let your wife talk about taking my house like I was already dead. You nodded, Marcus. When she said it, you nodded. His eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. God, Mom, I'm so sorry. Your mother, Talia whispered, staring at me like I was a stranger, tried to have you arrested. I smiled then. Not a happy smile. A sad one. No, sweetheart. You tried to have me removed. From my own property. In front of 200 witnesses. While wearing a dress I paid for, eating food I provided, in a building I own. The crowd had shifted, literally moved. They'd been standing in a loose circle around Talia, her court, her audience. Now they'd formed a different shape, and I was at the center of it, and they were looking at me with something I hadn't seen in years. Respect. Emily appeared then, pushing through the crowd in her wedding dress, her face streaked with tears and mascara. She looked like a beautiful, broken angel. Grandma, she whispered, and threw her arms around me. I held her. God, I held her so tight. This girl I'd raised, this woman I'd watched grow, this granddaughter who'd been kept from me like I was contagious. I didn't know, she sobbed into my shoulder. I swear, Grandma, I didn't know Mom didn't invite you. I thought you were sick. She told me you were sick and didn't want to stress me out before the wedding. Shh, I said softly, stroking her hair like I used to when she was small. I know, baby, I know. Talia made a sound, then half gasp, half sob. Emily, we can explain. Don't. Emily pulled away from me, turned to face her mother. Don't you dare. Grandma paid for my school. She raised me while you were building your career. She taught me to read. Her voice broke. She was there for every dance recital, every school play, every time I needed someone and you were too busy. Marcus reached for his daughter. Your mother was just trying to... To what, Dad? Emily's voice was steel now, cutting. To erase Grandma? To take her house? To throw her out of my wedding like she was nobody? She laughed, but it was bitter. You want to know something funny? The only reason I'm getting married here, in this beautiful place, is because of her. Not you. Not Mom. Her. Rebecca Torres cleared her throat. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we do have a schedule to maintain. She looked at Emily with genuine sympathy. Would you like to proceed with the ceremony? Your guests are waiting, the officiant is ready. Yes, Emily said immediately. Yes, I want Grandma here. I want her in the front row where she belongs. Talia's voice came out strangled, but the seating chart... Change it, Emily said flatly. Rebecca nodded. Of course, we'll adjust. She glanced at her tablet. There is one administrative matter, however. The remaining balance for today's event, $12,000, is technically still outstanding. We'll need payment before the reception begins. The color drained from Talia's face all over again. But we already... You paid the deposit, Rebecca said patiently. The balance is due today, per the original contract, unless Mrs. Wilson chooses to waive it as she did the other fees. Every eye in that ballroom turned to me. I looked at Talia, really looked at her. This woman who'd spent 23 years making me feel small, outdated, irrelevant. This woman who'd filtered my calls, skipped my birthdays, talked about my house like it was already hers. This woman who'd stood in this very room 30 minutes ago and tried to have me arrested. She was trembling now, her perfectly styled hair slightly mussed, her makeup starting to run, her designer dress suddenly looking like armor that had failed. Please, she whispered. Jada, please. We don't have. I didn't need to ruin them. Their lies had already done that. The balance is waived, I said quietly. For Emily. Not for you. Talia's shoulders sagged with relief so profound, she actually swayed on her heels. But, I continued, my voice still soft but carrying across that silent ballroom like a bell, I need you to understand something. This ends today. The comments about my house. The filtered calls. The suggestions about assisted living. All of it ends today. Marcus stepped forward. Mom, I swear we never meant. You meant exactly what you did, I said, meeting my son's eyes. You meant to push me out, to make room for the life Talia wanted, the life where I was a problem to be managed instead of a person to be loved. I paused. But I'm not asking for apologies anymore. I'm telling you how it's going to be. The crowd was utterly still, 200 people holding their breath. You will respect my home and my choices, I said. You will include me in family events unless I choose not to attend. You will never again treat me like I'm disposable. I looked at Talia. And you will never again speak to me the way you did today. Not in public. Not in private. Not ever. Talia nodded, tears streaming down her face now, her expensive makeup ruined. I turned to Emily, took her hands. Your wedding is in 20 minutes, sweetheart. Let's not waste it on old pain. She hugged me again, whispering, thank you over and over. The crowd began to move, conversations resuming in hushed tones, people finding their seats, the wedding planner rushing forward with a clipboard and a determined expression. I watched Talia and Marcus stand there in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by 200 people who now knew the truth. Who'd witnessed her cruelty, his cowardice, my quiet strength. They'd come here expecting to celebrate, to be admired, to bask in the glory of their daughter's expensive wedding. Instead, they'd been exposed. And I hadn't raised my voice once. Some debts don't need to be collected. Life has its own way of balancing the books. The wedding was beautiful. I sat in the front row where I belonged, where I should have been all along, and watched my granddaughter marry a good man who looked at her like she hung the moon. The officiant spoke about love and commitment and building a life together, and I felt something crack open in my chest that I'd kept locked for years. Not anger anymore, just release. When Emily walked down the aisle, she caught my eye and smiled, really smiled, the way she used to when she was 7, and I'd pick her up from ballet class with hot chocolate waiting in the car. And I smiled back, tears on my face, but good tears this time. Clean tears. Marcus and Talia sat 3 rows back. I'd insisted on it. Emily had wanted to move them further, but I'd said no. They're still her parents, I told my granddaughter. And this is still a family wedding. Emily had hugged me for that. But I'd also told Rebecca to make sure they understood. Any disturbance, any scene, any whispered comment loud enough to reach me, and security would escort them out. Not as punishment. As boundary. They stayed quiet the entire ceremony. After the noise fades, what's left isn't victory, it's understanding. The reception was everything Emily had dreamed of. String quartet, 5-course dinner, a cake so tall it needed its own table. I watched guests dance and laugh and celebrate, and I felt oddly separate from it all, not in a bad way, just observant, like I was seeing everything from a distance that finally made sense. Talia's mother, Gloria, approached me during cocktail hour. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Jada," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology. We all do," Talia told us. Well, she told us a version of things that wasn't true. I looked at her, this woman who'd made snide comments about my cute little house, and my vintage wardrobe, and my simple lifestyle for 23 years. "I know," I said simply. "I didn't know you'd done so much for them," she continued. "For Marcus, for Emily, for—" "I didn't do it for credit," I interrupted gently. "I did it because I loved them. That's what mothers do." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Talia's. She's struggling with what happened today. She's embarrassed. Ashamed." "Good," I said, and Gloria's eyes widened. "Not because I want her to suffer, but because shame means she finally understands. Understanding is the first step toward change. Justice isn't about watching them fall. It's about standing again without hate." Marcus found me near the end of the night. The party was winding down, guests filtering out into the Manhattan evening, Emily and her new husband saying goodbye at the door. He approached slowly, like you'd approach a wild animal you weren't sure would let you come close. "Mom," he said. Just that. Just my name. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised alone, this boy I'd sacrificed everything for, and I saw him clearly for the first time in years. Not the idealized version I'd carried in my heart, not the ungrateful villain I'd painted him as in my anger, just a flawed human being who'd made terrible choices because it was easier than standing up to his wife. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know how I let things get so." "You stopped seeing me," I said quietly. "Not all at once, gradually, until I became background noise in your life, a problem to be managed instead of a person to be loved." He flinched. "I never meant." "I know," I said. "But intent doesn't erase impact, and the impact of the last 5 years, Marcus, it broke something between us. Can we fix it?" His voice cracked. "Please. Can we try?" I looked at him for a long moment, this man who'd once held my hand crossing Broadway, who'd kept every napkin note I'd ever written him, who'd looked at me after his pharmacy school graduation and mouthed thank you across a crowded auditorium. That boy was still in there somewhere. But this man needed to find him first. "Heal yourself first," I said gently. "Figure out who you are without Talia telling you. Learn to stand up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable." I paused. "Then we'll talk." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I love you, Mom." "I know you do," I said. "I just need you to show it." I used to believe love meant giving everything. Now I know love also means knowing when to stop. I left the venue around 11. Rebecca walked me to the door, handed me my coat, smiled at me with something that looked like respect. "You handled that beautifully," she said. "I handled it honestly," I replied. Beauty was just a side effect. Outside, the November air was crisp and clean. Manhattan at nightlights reflecting off glass towers, yellow cabs streaming down Fifth Avenue, the eternal hum of a city that never quite sleeps. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing it in. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily. Thank you for everything, Grandma. I love you so much. I smiled, typed back, love you more, baby. Enjoy your honeymoon. Then I put my phone away and started walking. Not to the subway. Not yet. Just walking. Down Fifth Avenue toward Central Park, past store windows and restaurants and people living their lives, arguing and laughing and existing in all their messy, complicated humanity. I spent my whole life loving people who believed I was powerless. Turns out, silence is the strongest power I ever had. If you've ever lost yourself trying to love someone who only saw your worth in numbers, I hope my story reminds you, it's never too late to choose yourself. Thank you for keeping these stories alive, stories where justice doesn't shout, it heals. The city lights blurred slightly. Not from tears. Just from finally being able to see clearly.